Chapter 3. Keith laughed while everyone screamed and thrashed as they plummeted toward the ocean. Wow, what a bunch of babies. Don't worry, Foster's on it. His confidence melted some of the fog in Sophie's head, enough to let her focus on the energy rushing with her adrenaline. She shoved the force out of her mind and thunder cracked the sky, sending them crashing into the void. As they drifted with the darkness, Sophie imagined a picture she'd seen of Florence. Marble churches, red rooftops, a golden river lined with colorful buildings. She homed in on her favorite landmark, the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore. Thunder clapped again, splitting the blackness with blinding light. They slipped through the glowing crack and tumbled into a crowded courtyard, crashing into a marble wall and collapsing in a pile. Still gotta work out these landings, Keith groaned as he scooted out from under Fitz. Sophie was much more focused on the pain in her head as hundreds of voices sliced through her mind. Human thoughts broadcast like radio waves, even with her impenetrable blocking. Luckily, she'd learned how to shield her mind by imagining an invisible barrier around her head. Fitz rubbed his temples, clearly doing the same thing, but she refused to return the weary smile he gave her. Now they were in a forbidden city, and it was all his fault. It smells weird, Biana said. Probably human pollution, Fitz explained. I don't remember it being this strong, though. Me either, Sophie said. The air felt thick in her throat, and it had a bizarre caramel smell. Not at all what she'd expected for the land of pasta and garlic. So, are we invisible? Dex asked, watching the crowds milling around them. Or are they just more interested in that big doom thing? He pointed to the famous Duomo across the courtyard. Probably both. Fitz removed a small black orb from his satchel. My dad gave me an obscurer to help us stay hidden. The gadget bent light and sound in a limited radius, camouflaging anything inside. Are you serious? Biana asked. Then what was the point of these ugly costumes? It's called being careful, Fitz told her. Plus, I get to be Batman, Keith added. But I'm done with the jacket. Why is it so hot here? Too many people, not enough trees, Fitz said as he took off his scarf and coat, leaving him in a rather tight blue t-shirt. Biana ditched her sweatshirt, revealing a yellow screen-printed tee. I like that this one had a few girls, she told Sophie, pointing to the group shot of the X-Men, even if they have super weird hair. There's a guy who has blue fur all over his body, and you're focusing on the girl's hair? Keith asked. And hey, that clawed dude's yellow shirt might be as tight as Fitz's. Jealous? Fitz asked, flexing rather impressive muscles. Shouldn't we try to figure out where we're going? Dex asked, shoving his sweatshirt into his satchel and hugging his skinny arms against his chest. Probably, Keith agreed. But first, what is that? He pointed to the drippy ice cream a family was devouring. Whatever it is, I want some. I think that's gelato, Sophie told him, and forget it. Actually, I think it's a good idea, Fitz said. Keith leaned closer to Sophie. In case you were wondering, that is why he's my best friend. Sophie sighed. Even if we had time, how would you pay for it? Her friends were used to buying everything with their birth funds, a special account set up when they were born, with more money than they could ever use in a lifetime. But it was useless outside of the lost cities. Won't this stuff work? Dex asked, pulling out a wad of crinkled colored paper. I had it left over from when we were in that forbidden city after we got kidnapped. Parents and Flores did accept the same currency, but we don't have time for gelato, Sophie said. Keith draped his arm around her shoulders. Foster, live a little. You know he's going to keep pushing until he gets what he wants, right? Biana asked. Fine, Sophie mumbled. Give me the money. I'll be right back. We're coming with you, Dex said. I'm going to have to be visible to buy something, and together we'd be way too suspicious. But we're in costume, Biana argued. Yeah, but you guys will still stand out. I mean, look at you. You look like models. Wait, is Foster saying she thinks we're hot? Keith asked. I think she is. And the huge grin dimpling Dex's cheeks were practically beaming. Sophie wanted to deny it, but the truth was elves were way prettier than humans. Even Dex with his messy, strawberry blonde hair was 10 times cuter than any human boy his age. I'm just saying you guys will draw a lot of attention, Sophie said, especially since you don't speak Italian. She pointed to two portrait artists sitting in the shade of the Duomo, waving their hands as they talked. As a polyglot, Sophie could tell what they were discussing their favorite soccer teams, but the rest of her friends only spoke the elves' enlightened language. Fitz knew a little of English from his time searching for her, but that wouldn't get him far in Italy. Sophie's right, the less we're all seen the better, but I'm going with her. Fitz and handed Keith the obscurier and snatched some money from Dex. No one wanders off alone. Fine, Sophie was still mad at him, but they also needed to talk. I can't believe we're wasting time on this, she said as Fitz followed her through the crowds of tourists. It was so strange to see gray hair and wrinkles and glasses and canes after so much time around the ageless elves. I get that we're in danger, Fitz said, but that's why I thought this was a good idea. He scooted closer, lowering his voice as they passed a group of girls ogling him. I mean, aren't you worried about how everyone's holding up? Bianna seems really nervous, doesn't she? And Keith is barely keeping it together. I'm sure Dex has to be freaking out too, so if gelato makes them happy, don't you think that's worth it? I guess I hadn't thought of that, she admitted. But still, we'd have more time for things like gelato if you told me what the Black Swan's instructions were before we left and let me work on solving the riddle. I know, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to drive you crazy. I was worried you'd sneak away without us if I told you. The thought had crossed her mind several times. I just want to keep everyone safe, she mumbled. I know, so do I, and yet we're both making it worse, so why don't we stop trying to do it all on our own and start acting like a team? He held out his hand, and Sophie reluctantly shook it, feeling slightly gleeful when the ogling girls gasped. Her smile faded as she remembered the other subject they needed to cover. So, if we're really going to be a team, don't you think you should tell me what you saw in my mind? I didn't see as much as you're probably thinking, Fitz said carefully, and I couldn't understand it anyway. What does that mean? It's hard to explain. I ended up in the crazy place Mr. Fork called your emotional center. Now I get why Keith's always talking about how intense your emotions are. It was super overwhelming. And that was where you were when Mr. Forkle said, "Remember this place, you may need it?" Fitz nodded. He didn't say why though. Of course not. That wasn't how Mr. Forkle worked. He was the only member of the Black Swan she'd met in person, but she still knew nothing about him. Even his name was a fake human identity he'd created to disguise himself as her next door neighbor. She wanted to ask Fitz more, but he spotted a small gelateria at the end of the alley. She wanted to ask Fitz more, but think we should ask the shopkeeper if she knows about the path of the privileged, Fitz asked as they peeked through the windows. I doubt she knows, Sophie said, but it's worth a try. Her mouth watered as they made their way inside the studied and the shiny bins heaped with sculpted mounds of colorful gelato. Every flavor looked amazing, so Sophie took the shopkeeper's advice and ordered 5 cups of the melon. Okay, I don't know what's in this, Fitz said as he took a heaping spoonful, but it might be better than mallow melt. Sophie wasn't sure anything could beat the gooey cookie cake things Elf made, but the gelato did come pretty close. Can you think of any word that could be called the path of the privileged? Fitz asked the shopkeeper, his accent even crispier with the English words. When the shopkeeper didn't answer, Sophie repeated the question in Italian, adding, It's for a school assignment. Our teachers have us doing a scavenger hunt, and that's one of the clues they gave us. I bet your teacher wants you to learn on your own, not let adults do your work for you, the shopkeeper said, wagging her finger. But since you at least spoke to me in my language, I will tell you that your teacher probably means the Vasari corridor. As soon as the woman said the name, a dozen different facts clicked in Sophie's memory. The Vasari corridor was a historic walkway the medics had built between their palaces, so they could move through the city without having to walk among their people. Can you tell us how to get there? Sophie asked, paying for their gelato as Fitz gathered the cups for Keith, Dex, and Biana. One of the entrances is across the Arno, near the grottos at the Palazzo Pitti, the shopkeeper told her. The other is at the Uffizi Gallery, but there's no point walking to either. All landmarks are closed on today because of the fire. The sweet melon flavor turned sour on Sophie's tongue. What fire? Late last night at the Palazzo Vecchio. It breaks my heart. All that precious history lost because of some selfish arsonist.